G'day, welcome to Waranta, kani, mapali. Thomas and Rob here, and today we're going to be talking about the bias in the legal system when it comes to offences against blackfellas. How are you, Thomas?
Not too bad. As you can see, I'm brown and a bit red. I've been out in the sun and I've been loving it.
Yep, and I'm sitting in the niece's room today, so I'm in a little bit of a different spot. So, as we're saying, the bias in the legal system is becoming increasingly obvious, especially this year with the Zachary Rolfe trial in the Northern Territory, that all this evidence of prior violence towards blackfellas and stuff, 46 complaints over 4 years, is just beyond a joke that nothing was ever done about it. This person had also lied on his applications and stuff, yet none of this evidence was allowed to be brought out at the court case to show that, hey, this guy has got not so much a reputation, but he has been known and to be violent towards blackfellas and continually violent towards blackfellas. And he said these things about how he wants to do these things and even kill a blackfella so he can go on administrative leave. Now, this type of bias has been known by blackfellas for years. I go back many, many years ago, and you think about the John Pat case when 6 West Australian off-duty coppers beat a blackfella to death, John Pat, in the middle of an intersection, witnessed by hundreds of people, and were acquitted. Absolutely acquitted. Sergeant Chris Hurley on Palm Island murdered Cameron Dunwich, and I'll say murdered even though he was acquitted too, because that was murder. And if he wants to have a go at me and sue me, yeah, go for it. I've got nothing, so you'll get nothing. But the bias in the legal system is always set up towards protecting the police, and it's wrong. The police are supposed to be subject to the law as much as what we are, and in some cases more. But in practice, it's not. So, yeah, it's wrong. How do we get around this? I don't know. Any ideas?
Well, getting around it's the hardest part. I think you was talking about how the standards that we would be held to, and the standards sort of that are well, you didn't say these exact words, but you know what I'm referring to. With police, the standard that they should be held to for these issues should be tenfold of anyone else. I mean, they're there supposedly to look after everyone, not to look after one lot of people, not to look after wealthy people, businesses, whatever. They're there to look after everyone. And when you're sitting there and you're looking at the circumstances of these issues, not just with the ones that involve the police directly, but the ones that involve police turning up after an incident's happened and how they go about doing anything about it. Now, we had a short talk before we started this, and we were looking at a number of different cases, and we'll mention some of them as we go through. We can't go through all of them because we'd be here forever. Unfortunately, there's been a hell of a lot.
500 last 30 years.
Exactly. And one that came to mind, obviously, of recent times was the issue with what happened with Elijah Doherty. Now, we're talking about with the police, when he was ran over by the person that ran over him in a four-wheel drive, supposedly following him because of a bike that he was accused of stealing, for which there was never any proof shown. The police literally told that guy to take it into his own hands. Then after the incident happened, and this is all, you can find all this online through proper sources, not just Facebook and hearsay. It's there in the notes, probably from the case, but it's through a lot of paper reports and whatnot. It literally states that the police drove over the tracks where the four-wheel drive had gone, and that's just literally wiping out evidence. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the same thing as hiding, what they've done themselves with their incidents, where they end up getting off because obviously a cop isn't generally going to turn another cop in.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. It's I don't know that it's ever happened in Australia, other than maybe far less than a handful of cases. Probably less than 3.
The last time a police officer was convicted of murdering a black fella in Australia was 1838.
Oh, I meant with another cop turning on another cop. But I get what you mean there. Yeah, exactly.
All that evidence that had to be produced there at that trial, though, to convict that copper had to be done by other cops. And the fact that it was done even back then, obviously that copper or trooper or whatever at the time was probably a convict on release or whatever to be something like that. So it wasn't really, it wasn't modern times. And life was a lot cheaper back then. But it was also over a massacre. I think it was a Mile Creek massacre that that copper was executed over. So it wasn't just one death; it was an absolute massacre. And that was the last time, though, 1838. Since then, not one copper has ever been convicted of killing another blackfellow. So, we complain all the time. We've had, like we said, over 500 deaths in custody in the last 30 years. That's since the Royal Commission of Black Deaths in Custody, which was supposed to stop all that. It hasn't stopped. It's actually increasing. We've got more of a death rate now than what we had beforehand. And it's again, it's like the stolen generation. It's another thing that's increasing. They keep saying these things to fix these problems in the Aboriginal community, and they pay lip service to it, and that's it. Just lip service. Okay, we'll have a Royal Commission. It's going to cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. Have all these recommendations come out of it, and then we're not going to implement them. We implement half a dozen of them, and 173 or more are still left sitting there. 173 recommendations from the Royal Commission that could be stopping deaths in custody.
Yep.
But they can't unless they're. As you're saying, with the Elijah Doherty case, in that particular case, the guy who ran over Elijah on his own motorbike that he owned personally, his own motorbike, wasn't stolen, run him over and killed him. He wasn't charged with murder. He might have been charged with manslaughter. He wasn't convicted of it, though. He was convicted of the lesser degree of causing death by dangerous driving. Served less than 3 years. He was sentenced to 3 years and out on parole in much less. Now, that's wrong. Just recently, we've had the case with Cassius Turvey. Now, we've got to be a little bit careful here about what we say about the case and stuff. So I'm not going to mention the guys that did it or anything like that, but I will mention what the West Australia Police Commission came out with. And he came out and said, firstly, one of the first things he said was, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was a young boy walking home from school in uniform, not after dark or anything like that, in the middle of the afternoon on his way home from school. He's Aboriginal, he's on Aboriginal land. How can you be in the wrong place at the wrong time? I mean, it's unceded sovereign Aboriginal land anyway. So it doesn't matter where he goes in Australia, he's on his own land. To say it's the wrong place at the wrong time is just making an excuse for the actions of a white fellow. Then he came out to further and went on and said it was a vigilante assault gone wrong. Like it was a vigilante assault which are acceptable for him. So if it's a vigilante assault where no one's killed, that's perfectly acceptable. No, it's not. It's an assault. It is all vigilante assaults are against the law. Lynchings are against the law. Taking the law into your own hands is against the law. That's why we have the legal system there. We can't take the law into our own hands, but apparently everybody else can.
Yeah, exactly. And it's another factor of the wording. The idea, they mention vigilante straight away to make it sound like, the possibility that the kids did something to initiate.
Yeah.
It's always the blame being passed.
Yeah, there was, by saying vigilante, it was an implication that Cassius and his mate had done something wrong. So there was nothing wrong that had been done by them, apart from the fact they were walking on the street in black skins. That was the only thing they'd done wrong. His mother and dad told him, look, you're black, make yourself look little, because you're going to be picked on, you're going to be noticed, we shouldn't have to tell our kids that.
Exactly.
We shouldn't have to tell our kids, look, you've got to be careful coming home from school. You've got to be careful going to school. You've got to be careful at school. Every time you step outside your house, you've got to be careful. He had a lawn mowing business. Did he have to be careful when he's out mowing lawns and stuff as well? Mowing somebody else's lawn that he's going to be accused of, you're in somebody's some white fella's house. What are you doing there? I'm on the fucking lawn. They're sitting there on the porch watching me. But those sorts of things will happen. Because in this country, blackfellas don't have any rights.
Yep.
As much as they say we do, we don't.
The other thing that you mentioned to me, I hadn't even seen this until you mentioned it, and I ended up looking into it, was the fact that when they attacked and beat up Cassius, they also attacked another young boy that was younger, that was literally on crutches, and he was beaten with his own crutches.
And then had the crutches stolen, which he's been charged with stealing the crutches. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
They've murdered a guy, and they're worried about, okay, now we're going to have to make sure we've got all the charges there, stealing crutches and stuff as well. And it took them, how long do we even charge him? There wasn't a proper statement taken at the hospital with Cassius. That chance of getting a proper statement now has gone from him. He has no chance of getting his side of the story across. Only part of it. The evidence now is going to have to rely on his younger mate, who will be being intimidated and stuff like that by various sections of the community. And the police will not help with that.
Exactly.
They just want it to go away now. They want the Commissioner Cole Branch to be back in the good books and stuff, and not have to be up on in front of the cameras every few days and apologising for the remarks he made the previous day.
Yep.
Yeah, he came out and said, "Oh, yeah, in the wrong place at the wrong time." Okay, sorry, I've got to apologise for that. Okay, well, it was a vigilante assault gone wrong. Oh, now I've got to apologise for that. Why? Because your bloody language and your words do matter, and the words you're saying is giving a licence to white fellas everywhere to go out and just assault black fellas.
Yep.
And it's not on. I mean, it will get to the stage there where black fellas will start taking the law into their own hand as well, and we'll say, this is sovereign Aboriginal land at the moment. Until you sign treaties and stuff like that with us, all your laws are basically null and void. Aboriginal law is the law of this land. We can march into the police station, drag those people out, and execute them under Aboriginal law if we want to. Now, we don't want to do that, but if we have to make a point to one or two white fellas who literally deserve it, then we will.
Exactly.
Now, like I said, none of us want to do that. This is why they need to get together, sign the treaties and stuff, so we can start having some input into these laws and stuff there. And we've got to be honest, we don't want anybody else. We don't want to be signing a treaty with anyone else, any other country. The white fellas here in this country at the moment call themselves Australian. We're used to them. We know them. We're related to a hell of a lot. We don't want America coming in here and signing a treaty with us and bringing in the American system in, or English, or Chinese, or anyone else. We're quite happy with the system here today. So we're not going to be offering to sign a treaty with anyone else.
Yep.
But we're not going to just sign a treaty either, just for the sake of signing a treaty. It's got to be fair and equitable. And part of that is working out what's going to happen with the law and with making sure we actually get justice in the courts. Because at the moment we are not getting justice. We haven't had justice for the last 234 years. And we're not going to have it in the future. Not until these laws are changed. Not until there's systems in place to basically condemn racism at every level.
Yep. That's true.
And that means that when these incidents happen, that blackfellas die in custody or killed in the course of arrest, or by whitefellas on the streets, like's happened with Cassius, then the full standard law must be applied to these people, and maximum sentences must be imposed. Because we got to be maximum sentences to start with, to send that message that this is what is going to happen. In the past, it didn't happen, but now we are going to enforce this. We're going to enforce maximum sentences, because that's what the Aboriginal community want. They heard from the lack of action in the past, and they want the action now.
It's the same. It's the same issue we've had with the destruction of sites. There's there's never been anything that comes of it. It's very few organisations have even paid fines for like what happened in WA with the mining group that blew up a sacred site. With the incidents down here with people scratching out hand stencils that most of them wouldn't have even known they were there. So it had to be somebody that had the knowledge to find it. The one at the Metabanks, I'll mention it now because it's, you know, it's common knowledge now, but the same with a couple of other places, and the things that come of it, and the lack of care, and just the fact that the government doesn't enforce anything. So the people can continuously do these things, knowing that they're probably going to get a slap on the wrist, if that.
Yeah, there are things like when they're developing roads and stuff like that. Oh, look, we found this site. Let's destroy it anyway. Fine is going to be less than what it's going to be for us to shut down while they hold an inquiry.
Yep.
Yeah. Even if we shut down for 2 days, the fine's going to be less than that. The fine's only going to be a couple $100 or $1,000, $2,000. We can pay that out of petty cash if need be. There's literally no equity at all for Aboriginal people in Australia when it comes to the law. No equality, no equity. It's ridiculous. It has to change. People are going to start looking at this and think, okay, we're whinging about this, we're whinging about that, we're whinging about that. Well, come and put my boots on, walk a mile on my boots and see exactly what it's like for black folks. Go onto the courts and think, okay, I'm in that person's shoes. This evidence has been presented, and a similar case has happened 15 minutes ago. And the difference between them is so glaringly different because a black fellow is treated differently. It doesn't have as many rights.
Yep.
It's got to change. And part of that change, I think, is going to come about through, firstly, getting a treaty. Forget the voice to Parliament. That the federal idea of the voice to Parliament at the moment is set up to fail. And I said that yesterday. I said it on Twitter. I don't know whether you've seen it, but we've got state governments at the moment involved in, or state and territory governments involved in treaty negotiations. And that's not through any altruistic means. That's because they have to. They've got no choice. The UN and the World Court have given them a certain period of time after the Mabo case to sort the problem out, because all the governments in Australia do not have a legal leg to stand on because they have no sovereignty over the land.
Yep.
That sovereignty have no right to make laws. So they've been given a certain period of time to get their act in the water. That time is fast running out, and now they're having to do this. So as part of that, Albo said, yeah, come on, we're going to do the Uluru Statement, but we're going to do my version of it, not their version of it, because their version of it is too good. If we do my version of it, it will fail. We'll still get our sovereignty through the states by default, and problem solved. Albo is as much a friend to Aboriginal people as what he is to unemployed and welfare recipients. Yeah, he knows what it's like because he grew up in a council flat in Western Sydney and so on. But that was so many years ago, he doesn't remember what it's like and doesn't care anymore. It was a good marketing campaign, though.
Yep. No, fully agree.
That's all it was. It was a good marketing campaign. Same as on the night of the election when he came out and said, we're going to support the Uluru Statement. Everybody was jumping up and down with joy. I was too. But then the details started to come out and I realised, well, no, you're not actually supporting it. You're doing the barest minimum to make it look like you're doing something.
I've got to state, since we've mentioned that, because I'm on camera, I've never been for the Uluru Statement just because of people in the area that I'm friends with, Anangu people, and some others that just obviously never backed it. They've given their side of things to me, and I've acknowledged that, and I understand that. I've always been more for the idea of state treaties and doing things from each end, because I think eventually that leads to a federal treaty. When we seen Jason Wright Brown the other day, who was talking to us after the vigil for Cassius, I said it to him. I believe that's the better way to go. The Uluru Statement's got so many different strings attached from other people that have had input and wrote books about it and stuff like that, that it sort of amazed me the way it went. I understand what was generally wanted, what it was supposed to be for, but just seeing all the other things that have come from it, I sort of just don't see it as optional
the
anymore.
original idea was really good. The original document was really good. But since then, it's been added to and twisted and turned about in so many different ways. The government have got their hands on it and said this, that, and the other. And it's so far removed from what the original was supposed to be now. It's unbelievable. And the original was only supposed to be a discussion paper. That's all it was. It was just a discussion paper to lead on towards more meetings with the Aboriginal community, so we could actually sit down and decide what was going to happen, what we wanted amongst us first. And all of a sudden, this discussion paper, which was supposed to be basically an internal Aboriginal communities document, was released and put out as being, okay, this is what Aboriginal people want. Now, this is what some wanted, but we haven't finished the process yet. And until we finish that process, I don't think we should be going forward with anything more. I mean, the state governments, they can hold their treaty negotiations. A treaty with state governments is fine. But with the federal government, which is where it gets a little bit tricky, because they say, well, why do you need a treaty then with the federal government? Well, because state governments don't have money. All the money that is taxed off us goes to the federal government and then passed back.
Yep.
We need to have assurances from the federal government as well that a certain amount of that money is going to be earmarked for Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal nations across the land and across the country, and equitably too. So not 90% of that money is going to the Northern Territory or Northern Western Australia or somewhere like that, but on a population basis, it is spread out evenly. And the money's going to go to where it's needed, but the amount of tax that goes out of the state, a percentage of that must come back in for Aboriginal affairs, and then there has to be a percentage then from the federal government as well that has to come back as well.
Yep, agree. So we covered a bit there. We've gone into obviously how we see how treaties should be able to help with some of this, at least the way we view it and how it should go. What I wanted to sort of cover, just to give a bit of an idea to some people that may not have heard of a lot of the incidents that have happened in the past. As you mentioned, there's been a lot, and a lot of people only really know about the current ones because of things like social media and the fact that some of the news stations now actually cover this stuff instead of just ignoring it, and the papers for that matter. I think it's worth mentioning a few of the others that have happened. We won't go into detail. We don't need to. People don't need to hear all of this information again, the families in particular. But there is aspects of things that do need to be mentioned. I had a look last night at a couple, and one of the ones that I found interesting for all the wrong reasons was a young fella, Cleon Jackman. He was 14. He was kidnapped. He was tied up, tortured, and essentially murdered by a man and two women. I won't go into full detail. I did have a link up the other day, but I can't find it now. That sort of pointed out a bit more about, in particular, what happened. But in his circumstance, he was a kid, same situation as what's happened with Cassius, where he's been accused of, I think it was breaking into houses at the time. They've taken him, a 14-year-old boy, they've tied him up and drove off with him, picked him up off the road. They've tortured him. Apparently they burnt him while doing this. And then they've gone and tried to hide the evidence afterwards. Now, I say it that way because I saw some conflicting information. One of them was even worse than the other because it stated that he may have been alive when they tried to hide him, as in bury him, which makes me feel fucking sick, even worse than I already do. And then you have the fact that the people that were involved have been able to get paroled. One of them was sent back to New Zealand, and she's literally gone through and tried to claim her the fact that she didn't do it. over there. She's claimed that she was forced into acknowledgement of taking part. And in doing that, the charge was changed. It was, I think it was, it wasn't willfully murdered, the boy. It was, they had to accept murder on their behalf under their circumstances, but it wasn't willful murder. And when that wording, this is where the wording comes into it again. When that's changed, that changes what they can face. Obviously,
change the sentencing and everything like that as well.
Exactly. And in the current state of things, that person was sent back to New Zealand and served whatever period of time there, if any. Otherwise, they served it in Australia, I'm assuming. Like I said, I've only gone partial notes because I had to do this a bit late last night. But the fact that they've been, able to go around and try and state innocence just does my head in. Luckily, I did notice, because some of this was public on Facebook, that the person was just getting ridden into the ground by locals, including some Maori mob as well, and people from Australia that had seen it, just stating bullshit. And once you're involved in something like that, I don't think you can just go and do that. You can't. I just think it's bullshit to run around, trying to proclaim innocence after something like that. This isn't just a murder of an adult, and I say murder's murder, but when it's a child, and that child's had to have been taken from somewhere else for this to occur, it does my head in that people would try and proclaim it anything other than willfully going out to murder that child. Mm. And that was one that I wasn't fully aware of. That happened in 1999, from what I could see. Another one, which I won't go into detail because I haven't. I might even see if I can find the link for it. But there was a young boy in 1992. They've got him as two names. I think he was adopted. He was from the Northern Territory. They've got him under Lewis St. John Johnson, and then they've got him under Warren Braden. He was 19, and he was another boy that was died from a racially targeted attack. In his circumstance, if I remember rightly, I'm just going to see if I can find that information. So he was Larita and Arnol. He's had books written about him and some other stuff, but I'm trying to find that link. Sorry about this. These are things I should have had fully noted. But as we said, these are things that we haven't always heard about. A lot of people haven't heard about this one.
Anyway, it's like a lot of these others, though. There's information is out there for people who want to look at it and want to understand. Yeah, there are another couple of names. John Pack, we've already mentioned, but also TJ Hickey in Sydney, Cameron Dumaju on Palm Island, murdered by a cop. And it was murder. The list goes on and on and on. In every state there's others. Kumajaya Walker in Alice Springs. And that case was only this year and is ongoing now at the coronial inquest. And all this evidence is coming out of the coronial inquest, and the coroner themselves is just beside themselves and asking questions why 46 complaints of excessive force over 4 years against blackfellas, why was nothing done about it? Not one complaint was ever upheld. All dismissed.
With his case as well, one of the police officers that turned up supposedly after the incident refused to give evidence.
Yeah.
And that's just and it was and they were virtually congratulated by the commissioner. Yeah. It's their right not to do it. Well, yeah, okay, but don't act like there was nothing there, because why would he not want to give evidence?
as police officers to collect evidence to give in court and stuff. They must give it in court. That is part of their duty. It's part of their job. If they don't want to do it, fuck off out of the force.
It was Michael Hollingsworth was the cop. He was in a police truck that arrived after the supposed incident, I guess. But yeah, he refused to give evidence. And as we said, not many cops do give evidence against other police. It's very rarely happened. And in the circumstance of where it would have somebody prosecuted for the murder or bashing or whatever else of a black fella, it just hasn't happened at all. Not for over 100 years.
Well, in that case, a cop refusing to give evidence like that, as far as I'm concerned, is contempt of court. I mean, he should be locked up until such stage as he wants to open his mouth and start giving that evidence. If he doesn't want to give that evidence, then stay locked up, cop. Sorry. And when you come out, you'll be turfed out of the police force. But we need to know what happened. Your job is to collect that evidence and present it in court, whether it is evidence you want to present or not. If it is evidence going against another cop, bad luck. You have to do
it. With the incident that I mentioned about Warren Braden or Lewis Johnson, he was 19. I think it was literally the night of his 19th birthday. He was murdered by a group of white youths, and they admitted they done it because he was black. He was literally walking home on his 19th birthday. There's a book called A Boy's Short Life. The story.
Is that the one that was happened in the Todd River? It was three or four young blokes from Alice Springs, and who were described as good, upstanding, fine young men. And
yep,
yes,
by the judge.
Remember.
Yep.
Yes, by the judge. He was the one that described them. Not their lawyer, but he described them as that.
Yep. That's correct. That one made me feel really fucking sick because the police up there at the time too were known for taking blankets from the people that were sleeping out there in the riverbed. And
in Alice Springs in winter, it gets bloody cold overnight.
Yep, and that was one of the things that mentioned in particular, that even those youths that were claiming they were going down with intent of taking the blankets from the people down there, and obviously they've ended up doing a lot more than that.
Yep, and we're acquitted.
Yep, it's true, and it's just bullshit, and it goes on and on. We'd be here forever if we try to cover all of it, but basically every time one of these incidents happens, it seems particular wording is always used. It's always circled around, being upfront. It's never that the person's willfully murdered somebody. The charges, if they're laid at all, they always get changed to either manslaughter or murder of a lesser degree, or as in Elijah's case, it gets changed to fucking dangerous driving, which is just utter bullshit.
There's always a degree of victim blaming there.
Yep.
Always a degree of victim blaming. It's, as Grace Tame says, it's Darbo. Deny, so on and so on. Reverse the victim order. It's continual, absolutely continual.
We'll be back. Hopefully, we'll see what goes on next week. I'm thinking we'll start doing some community interviews, give us a bit of time to think about other topics that we can discuss. And I think in doing community interviews or chat, it's going to be a good chance for us to involve some other people.
Exactly.
I'll send out some invites to people, and we'll just try and get a hold of them as soon as we can.
I'll step back into my old journalist role and we'll have some good discussions.
I think it'll work well. Williker?
No. Williker, mate.